Hello and welcome to Defense Diaries. I'm your host, Bob Mata, and this is our weekly Q&A with the lovely and talented Lauren Bright Pacheco. What is up?
Not much. I've had a busy week. I lost my I was traveling with my microphone and I don't have my cover. So excuse
you're
my
little,
naked microphone.
I mean, it looks exposed. It seems a little shy right now. It doesn't look to be its normal confident self. It seems to be.
It's all fun and games till I start popping my peas. If you're that's why.
All right. So if you guys, I see Susan was a little lost. Yeah, we had to switch it around a little bit. Lauren was very busy. She had amazing things going on. Her son's birthday. She had the iHeart Awards, podcast awards going on. She was traveling from Austin on our normal day, which is Tuesday. I had a bunch of stuff going on yesterday, so I could not make it work. And it's not our normal time because, as you guys know, I've got Josh Schiffer and Rich Schoenstein scheduled for tonight, which I had scheduled for a while ago at our normal time. So we figured we'll just pop this right here, and then you
we went rogue.
We did. So how are you? So we're getting so close to the end.
I know it's very close to the end, but there will be updates. Yes. There will be updates on this one, which a lot of people have already had the chance now to listen to 11, which dropped today, which we will discuss in full force next week once everybody's had the chance to give a listen.
Yep.
But yeah, this has been on so many levels one of the most challenging but rewarding stories I've ever tackled.
Yeah.
And I think the same is, I don't want to speak for you, but I think that you probably feel the same way.
I definitely do. It's, I mean, it's kind of that thing that we talk about all the time in terms of when you are involved in wrongful conviction work, it is a very challenging endeavor for a lot of different reasons. I mean, one, you're trying to vet the information to see if you're in agreement with the fact that you think that a particular person has been wrongfully convicted. So there's that challenge. There's the challenge of digging in yourself. And like in our situation, we were boots on the ground, and we knew that we would meet resistance out there in the streets, which we did. I think that we persevered. But, that's still unnerving, when you're doing it. But, it's for the cause. And you can't really get the information that you need to reach that first conclusion that I was talking about. Are we of the mindset that we're dealing with a wrongful conviction and or an unfair trial? And sometimes those things are the same thing and sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's situations that exist where somebody that may be guilty may in fact have not received fair trial, and they deserve another trial. And we can't just decide that, well, even though we think that we're guilty, they don't get a fair trial. That's not how the Constitution works. It's not the system of government we live in, and that's not how the judicial system works. So we can't do that. We can't pick and choose. It's all or nothing. And then the other part of it is that that concept of when you're out there poking around and you're making statements publicly like, look, we think that this might be a wrongful conviction. You have to be super cognizant of the fact that there's a victim's family out there that is feeling this and hearing about it, and it's opening wounds for them and all those things. So, you try to go into these situations being super cognizant, being ethical about what we're doing, being is thoughtful about what we're doing, and more importantly, and what we were able to accomplish here is being able to try to speak with them,
Mhm.
which goes such a long way in kind of pointing out what we're trying to do.
Well, also because knowing all of that, we didn't take this lightly.
Right.
And knowing all of that, we knew that the chips could fall either which way. And that in and of itself, you mentioned the family piece, and that's why I think it is exceedingly important to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
The heartbreak and just the domino effect of not getting it right the first time. You are re-traumatizing the victim's family as well. And that there are a lot of things that could have been avoided. And I don't want to really lay out exactly where we fell at the end of this. We'll do that in the episode that aired today in episode 11. But what we did realize very quickly is that 4 days, even if you want to say that you had 20 people working around the clock for 4 days. That's not exactly a thorough investigation because a lot of things take time. When there is a horrific murder, you may find out more clues and tips about that murder 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, and in our case, 4 years after it occurred. So I would love to get, listeners' reaction to 10.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And it's like, to that last point, my coverage of Richard Allen, which I'm going to this advocacy con next week, who my friends are putting together. It's in Indianapolis. I'm really excited about it. And my friend just hit me up. He's like, "Hey, I'm getting a lot of pushback from families because of your coverage on the Richard Allen thing." And, the fact that I had uh, posted a link to a fundraiser for funds for Richard Allen and his defense team, because at the time that was created, the judge was not providing proper funding for this guy to get experts and so forth. So he just messaged me. He's like, "Yeah, I'm getting pushback." And that exact point that you were making about how important it is to get it right the first time is so lost on victims' families, because a lot of times they're just not willing to listen, you know?
Or look, as it's unfolding in real time, they are riding the horrific waves of grief. I have not, luckily, knock wood, lost somebody I care about in such a brutally violent way. But I have lost my father, and I know that it comes in waves. There's no rhyme or reason for what would trigger that overwhelming feeling of grief and emotion. It could be a commercial. It could be somebody wearing a sweater. It could be walking through a mall and catching a glimpse of somebody who, from the side, looked exactly like my father. And so when you add that on top of ramping up for a trial, and you have people who are almost your handlers in terms of the prosecution and the police, and they're telling you what they think you can handle and what they think you need to know at any given point, and you put your trust in that. We all do to some extent, but if someone's telling you, we know who killed your loved one, we got them, and they're going to pay, it's understandable that they would be completely unwilling to revisit it. And so in this case with Michael Beasley's family agreeing to sit with us, Brenda and Bailey, it was so impressive. And again, we've said it earlier, but the fact that they were willing to give the grace and the space for the
Yeah.
possibility that this was a wrongful conviction speaks volumes to their honestly an admirable character.
Yeah. Well, and just a willingness to listen, when it's really easy to shut it down. I mean, like, it's hard to imagine, it's impossible to imagine being in that position where you've lost a loved one in that fashion. And, it's impossible to really put yourself in their shoes. But I am sure that there are many people out there that basically want to, turtle, go under their shell and not have to deal with anything. They just want to trust that law enforcement got it right because law enforcement told them they got it right. The prosecutor told them they got it right. And, any kind of statements to the contrary, they don't want to hear it.
No, and then the stages of grief. If you can tap into the anger of the stages of grief. Gretchen brought up something about 10 that I'd love to go back to. Um, Probably about a minute or two ago in the scroll, she talked about how heartbreaking it was to hear from Jaden.
Yeah.
And I agree. I've said this and we've spoken about this many times. I get emotional thinking about what that kid went through. And there are many victims in this story. And of course, first and foremost, Jade. But Jaden lost everything
Yeah.
the day she was murdered. He never set foot in his own bedroom again. Just think about how emotionally unnerving that would be, how he lost access to his siblings.
Everything.
Everything.
Every
Um,
semblance. Like, he went from having a family and a home to having none of that. I mean, he has Renee, but every semblance of normality that existed in his life vanished in the blink of an eye, with no warning, with really no way to be able to talk to anybody about it. It's like, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
and he's a freshman in high school now. And
Such a
just the
sweet
kind,
boy.
oh my goodness, just the kindest, most thoughtful. And I mentioned in the episode that you get the feeling that he's learned not to ask for anything because he doesn't expect it. One of the stories that I did not share in the podcast because it kind of felt self-serving, but I feel like within this community, it will be understood. You and I were both taken aback by the fact that he wears around his necklace this chain, and on that chain was a ring, and we realized in real time that it was the promise ring that the man he considered his stepfather gave his mother because they were to be married. Um, and the chain that he had was too long. And so I said, "Oh, I I have a silver chain at home that I'm not wearing that I mailed to him. It's too short." So he hasn't, but it's impossible to be around Jaden. The point of that story is it's impossible to be around him without feeling compelled to make something better for that kid. he does not deserve the way his life has unfolded to this point. And to his credit, he is just relentlessly optimistic and
Yeah.
positive. Um, and he is sure that his mother is going to be out and with him. And I mean, you cannot help but want that for him
Yeah,
and
you're
for
absolutely rooting for him. Like, if you're not rooting for that young man, then I don't know what you're doing with your life. I mean, it's like he like I always say, they're the victims in these crimes are many. It touches everyone that had any connection to that victim, no matter what that connection is, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, associate. Like it impacts so many people so profoundly. And Jaden in particular just happened to be right in the front of that wave. I mean, he took the brunt of it like probably only Mike did, in terms of having an understanding of what was going on to a certain extent, but still being in the dark in a lot of different ways about what happened. It's like just standing in front of this tidal wave of grief that's just about to wash over you, and not really being prepared for it because there's no way you can prepare for it, and then not having anybody to really talk to about it. It's like, you saw that with, like, from a completely different perspective. The thing that resonated with me so much about Christopher Vaughn's case is when, you start to sit back and think that when he is arrested while he's attending his family's funerals, they arrest him that day, and then he is put in and he is cut off from all communication from like like any substantive communication with anybody that he would consider a support. And he's left to rot with his own thoughts and trying to deal with grief. And it's like, when you just think about things like that, and you try for just a moment to put yourself in that person's shoes to try to understand what that might feel like psychologically, um it's hard not to feel sympathy. And when and that's with a person who's now sitting in prison as a convicted family annihilator. Imagine if you're talking about a kid like Jaden, who essentially, without being in a cell, was in almost the exact
same
same
prison.
situation.
Hmm.
you know? So yeah, yeah, it's a brutal case. But we want to hear from you guys. We really, really do. I mean, now that we've reached the end of it, it's important for us, no matter what your position is on this case. We want to hear from you guys. We want you to send us emails,
And I have
DM
received
us.
many, many direct messages, and I read them all. Anybody who sent one can attest to the fact that I do respond. I think that particularly, it's important for people to know that today's episode 11, which dropped this morning, there are still more pieces to this puzzle that they will hear. It's not a pile on because, but there's there's even more. And I believe that there will continue to be more things that drop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's guaranteed. I mean, at this point, we're in the appellate phase, so obviously we're gonna be digging into that aspect. But in terms of,
No spoilers.
yeah, in terms of, things that we continue to dig up, because like you said, um, things just happen, have a way of tending to surface sometimes in these cases that, um, may take years to get there. But it happens.
So
Or
Stephanie has a question. Stephanie, but there's a space. So Stephanie, there you go. So we touched upon this in previous weeks a little bit, but it is definitely worth revisiting. I think again, we talk about you're reeling with trying to process grief and the tragic loss of a child. And then you have police coming to you and saying, we know who did it, and spinning it in such a way that they were leading Michael Beasley to feel like he didn't really know the real Julie Bevely, that there was another side, a secret life. And once you start building on that little seed of doubt and suspicion, it can snowball really quickly. And then you also had the fact that, it wasn't a union that was completely supported by his family. And so then again, you have that retrospective bias where you're able to look at things in the rearview mirror and think, you know what? She was really quiet at family gatherings. Um, and it really begins to, like little pixels. You take a step back and a picture snapped into place for him that he did not question because he was being told by everyone that it was her. He was wrong about her, that this was always something that was within her capability. And so he also spoke to her the night of the murder, and she still had not recalled the Hux thing. Keep in mind that we've talked many times about this frozen response theory, and that we don't know how our brains will react to trauma. Beverly was traumatized as well. And so her understanding and memory of that day was not as clear the day it happened as it was subsequently. She ended up putting together pieces a year and a half, 2 years after, as she was going through the crime scene photos as well, things that jogged her memory. She had shut down. It's very difficult for her to talk about. And when you listen to the interrogation, when she talks about finding Jade, her voice wavers. Like you feel the emotion as she is seeing in her mind's eye what she experienced. She told Renee, when Renee Hightower picked her up at the station, that she had seen something that no parent should see. And so I think that it's very difficult to pass judgment on her lack of complete recollection, unless you've walked in her shoes. But for Mike, the fact that she told him that she did go to Walmart, I think that that was a seed of doubt that sprang into a full-fledged tree.
yeah, I agree. And like we have touched upon this many, many times. But it always bears repeating because if you start, and you know how I've always looked at this, right, Lauren? It's like it's always like I've tried to look at it from, okay, Julie did this. How does her thought process work in that? How do I make the facts fit with that premise? And then, okay, Julie didn't do this. And how do I make the facts fit with that premise? How do I try to get into her psychology and what that would be if she didn't do this? And when you think about everything that would have been going on in her mind, presuming that she didn't do this, the minute that she walks into that door with the encounter and then discovering Jade, to then law enforcement being there, to then being taken into the police station. And I don't care if she was taken in cuffs or went, willingly, she was in custody, to realizing in relatively short order, that they're looking at her. And if you can't allow yourself to understand what your mind might be doing, how it might be operating in that situation, and where things may not be functioning as they normally do. I mean, I can't articulate it any better than that, because you just can't know what you would be saying, doing, thinking in that moment, in all of those moments. And like as Lauren said, it's only after she kind of gets a moment when she's out of the police station, away from law enforcement, where she gets a moment to start thinking, where maybe there's some semblance of normal thought going on in her mind, where you have to be thinking about, like, your mind would just be racing. Think about any situation you've ever been in where there's some kind of trauma that's happened, even as simple as a car accident. You start thinking about, wow, I just left my friend's house. If I would have just given his wife a hug,
30 seconds, 30
or
seconds either which way, the
you know,
difference it would have made.
it's unbelievable. So, like, all of those things are just racing through your mind, and it's just, you have to think about these things when you're thinking about these cases, because we're not robots. These aren't just stories that Lauren is writing up a script about some fictional thing that happened. These are human beings that have gone through the unthinkable, and you're trying to piece it together, and we're doing the best we can to try to, because we've talked to Renee, we've talked to Julie, and it's like ad nauseum, and it's still incredibly hard for them to grasp all of it.
And we talk to people at length who you have not heard on the podcast, who you may eventually hear from. I want to go to Stephanie again, because this is really important, guys.
Yeah, I've got them
Stephanie
all.
said,
I
and
think
Stephanie,
I've
I'm not
got them
singling
all.
is not singling you out, but Lauren, did they find what she said she threw away at the dump by chance? This is important. She didn't throw anything away at the dump. The prosecution contends that Bevely drove up to the Huck's gas station and threw away a bag. In that bag, they contend, and we have the video, you can clearly see it fits in one hand, and she tosses it with one hand before she gets back. And it is not a sealed bag, it is a small bag. According to Bevely, it was dirty diapers that she had changed one of her two toddlers, and they were still in her SUV. She realized her gas light was on, that she didn't have her wallet, and she turned in to pull around. And while she was there, smelt something, took it out, threw it away, got back in, and left. The prosecution went to check Huck's, and they found nothing. They contended that she threw away her bloody clothing, which would have been heavy and saturated with blood, the shoes she was wearing, because they scoffed at the fact that she was wearing flip-flops, even though you can tell in the video that that's what she has on her feet, the murder weapons, and a bloody shower curtain. No shower curtain was missing from the house. No shower curtain was found at Huck's. No shoes were found at Huck's. No bloody clothing were found at Huck's. Nothing was found at Huck's. So what they did was went to the landfill, where all the garbage that was taken from Huck's would have been taken next. And they spent countless hours, according to them, digging, and they took anything they could tangibly link to a possible murder and used it as evidence. It never should have been admitted into court. None of these things were linked by DNA to the murder scene. None of them. There was no missing shower curtain, and the shower curtain they found had no DNA from Julie Bevely or Jade Beasley or the home or anything. They couldn't link them to Huck's. They couldn't link them to Marion, let alone Songbird Road. So nothing was found that linked Julie Bevely to this murder ever by anyone. I just want to make that really, really clear, because even Jade Beasley's family was under the impression that she threw something away for appearance sake and then drove back to the dump and got a huge bag and chucked it in there. That never happened. That was never caught on tape.
Not only was it not caught on tape, we see her leave the
Yes.
gas station.
And again, they never found any of that stuff. None of it.
Yeah,
I wish they had searched for poop-filled diapers, because we may have found those.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of them coming back with a couple of rusty old knives or a sickle or whatever the hell they had in the shower curtain, I think the biggest takeaway should be that they didn't find bloody clothes, because a weapon, and you're talking about a landfill, people throw old shit away all the time. But in terms of bloody clothes, and they were there for a long, long time.
I mean, again, we talked about this. You can call that dedication or you can call it desperation. They were going to try to make anything they found fit in the evidence category to use against her. It's also very important to note that Michael Beasley did not take the stand until, I believe, the last day of trial. And he never saw what they put forth as evidence. So he never said, hey, wait, that shower curtain was never in our home. We didn't own these utensils. Again, there's no DNA that ties these things to Marion, to Hux, or to Songbird Road, and certainly not to Julia Bevely.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry, that's my tirade for the day.
No,
but but that's, you said it. Once you put a skunk in the jury box, you can't get rid of the smell. To
right.
This day, people are under the misconception that, oh, and they're like, well, of course it couldn't be linked. It was contaminated. Guess what? You can still, on bloody clothing, get DNA.
It's what are you kidding? Of course you get. It's mad. Like it's what they didn't find in the 20 hours. And I unfortunately, we haven't been able to talk to any law enforcement because, as you can imagine, they're not real friendly with us at this point. But you would think that they would have had a dog or two out there. You would think, where
At the landfill?
At the landfill.
Mhm.
Because what is more smoking gun? Like what I'm pointing out is that random knives found at a dump don't really do that much to push the needle forward in a case like this. Whereas bloody clothing, which if it's Julie, there has to be bloody clothing somewhere. It has to be. Like if you see what the crime scene looks like, if you hear the descriptions from the cops that worked that scene, who said it was one of the bloodiest scene, if not the bloodiest scene they've ever seen. The killer was just drenched in blood.
There would have been blood in Julia Bevely's hair.
Everywhere.
There would have been
saturated
everywhere.
in blood. And that means that they have to be somewhere. And we know that the only place that Julie Bevely went is to that gas station. We have it on video. They have her phone pinged. She didn't stop anywhere else.
And again, bears repeating as well. If this was something that she had suddenly morphed into some kind of criminal mastermind to plan, I love the word jackassery. And again, we've spoken about this. It's technically not a curse. You can say jackassery and it's not
allowed to curse on my channel, Lauren.
But that's why I love the word. So the jackassery of her deciding, when she lives in a rural area surrounded by empty fields, bodies of water, of driving into civilization so she can discard it on camera, is absurd. And not only that, we've talked about, if she did discard all the things that they claim she discarded, how big the bag. You try to take bloody clothing and stuff it into a tiny, those flimsy plastic bags that rip on your way out to the car, unless you double bag it. This wasn't even a sealed bag.
No,
And
we're talking about like we're talking about those grocery bags
it's
that
a
you get, the
Walmart plastic
bag,
bag with the
the
2
two
little
little
handles
plastic
that
handles.
you can't tie without breaking them apart.
At some point we're hoping that we'll be able to release that video because I want everybody to see it. You can clearly see that it's something that she's holding in one hand. To me, it looks like you can see the other hand. She's just got it by one of the handles because she probably just tossed the diapers in there.
It's
And then she just
not even tied tightly, and
right,
again,
and
you're
she just
right,
dumps it in.
she's not looking around suspiciously, trying to cover it up, with more things, lest someone find look in and see the blood, and this is a small opening on a garbage can at a gas station. They make them small because they don't want people discarding their real trash in there. And I would have we talk about it in the episode, but I would have used it as an opportunity to bring in the garbage can into the courtroom, have somebody pile those things into a bag that size. And first of all, it wouldn't fit in a bag that size. Second of all, they wouldn't have been able to get it into that hole without serious pressure with both hands, if not jumping up and down on top of it to make it fit. It makes no sense.
I mean, like to Shiraz says, who held on to
Who
dirty diapers? Who
Oh,
held on to dirty diapers until you could find
yeah,
out they're
I w
tripping? Right
I would
here. I mean, unless you're a savage, I mean, who's throwing shitty diapers out of the window? I have 4 kids. Lauren's got a bunch of kids. There have been situations when your kids have to go poo poo. They go poo poo when they're in diapers. And if you're in the car, Allison was crawling in the back and she was changing the diaper when
Mhm.
we were in the car. And then she'd bundle it all up into a little tight poo poo package. And then it would sit until we got to somewhere. If we're road tripping, then it would go into a garbage. And typically, if we had a bag, it would go in a bag. And when we traveled, we always carried like little plastic bags. If the kids were snacking, and on the rare occasion that I let them eat in the car on a road trip, I always wanted to have a
I
garbage bag.
one of too much information probably, but one of my worst travel, I was driving alone with the kids to Virginia to visit my parents, and my kids are 2.5 years apart to the day. And so I have meltdown happening with my eldest, my daughter, but my son is miserable and unhappy because he's sitting in a poopy diaper. So I pull over and I'm trying to appease her as I'm trying to clean, and it's one of those kind of like cat in the hat diapers where you keep wiping and it never you just more mess. And as I'm doing that, I'm leaning over trying to console my daughter as I'm trying to like change my son, and he peed all over me. And so yes, my car was filled with poopy diapers, you know, tons of those wet wipes, and y- everything I tried to wipe off of my person, but
Yeah,
I wore the remnants of that experience for the next 4 hours of the trip.
yeah.
So it
It's a badge
happens.
of honor. It's a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Motherhood is a badge of honor.
So I'm with you, Shiraz.
Okay, so Sheila asks, and so Stephanie gets the star, the gold star for the day because she's doing what I have requested that y'all do, which is to put those delicious question marks in front of the comment so that I can pick them out as I'm scrolling through. So Stephanie, you're the big winner today. So Sheila had asked, what do you think of the video? Was he identified?
Oh my gosh, it's so interesting, Sheila. The video, I Bob tells me not to read comments on Apple, and I try not to, unless someone tells me there's a nice one, and then I'll go and read that. But someone gave it 1 star and said, "Oh my gosh, that video sounds so fake. I haven't been here but 30 years." Or guess what? That's one of the things that jumped out to us when we listened, and boy, did we listen over and over and over again to it. Is it sounds like a very strange affectation, almost Shakespearean.
Yeah.
I have not been here but for 30 years or more.
It
And
sounds like bad Shakespeare in the
it
park
it
is what
does.
it
It
sounds like.
does.
Yeah.
But you know, the tattoos are visible. I will say that his physicality, in terms of his height and in terms of his build, which was muscular, it looks like our gentleman was either newly out of prison, which could explain his access to a gym and weights, or newly into his drug addiction because he still has weight on him and he looks fairly healthy for somebody who sounds that unhinged.
Yeah, and like just so you understand how meth addiction works, this isn't like you take, 2 blasts off your meth pipe and you're immediately
Emaciated.
emaciated
Yep.
with, sores, open sores on your face and your teeth fall out. That it takes years. So the fact that 3 months had gone by before this guy just happens upon and at this point, I don't know if the house was gone. I don't know
Yeah,
the
because keep in
modular
mind
home
it
had
was a
been
modular
raised.
home and they repossessed it. They took it back.
Right, so it's gone. So this guy shows up, and again, like, I think in one of the first or second Q&As I pulled up the map of the area. We did a Google Images. We could see the satellite. This is just an area where no one is ending up by accident. You're not wandering around a neighborhood,
Or so we thought.
or so we thought, unless somebody had a reason to go back there, is my point. It doesn't matter to me how much time has passed. It's significant that the modular home is no longer there. It's the footprint of it. It's February. This guy's wearing no shirt. He's beyond bizarre. Like everything about it is so strange that it's impossible to ignore the significance of it. It's impossible.
And you know what? I don't care if it was 3 days, 3 weeks, a year. There is a cliche that the criminal always returns to the scene of the crime. And that very much was the vibe. He seems agitated and conflicted that he's working himself up to bang on the door and saying that he comes in peace and that he hasn't been there but for 30 years or more. To knock on the door of a stranger shirtless in February and to say that you come in peace, referencing that you have been there before, hits different in this case.
Really does. Really does. It like hard. Okay, we're getting a bunch of great stuff here. So I'm marking everything.
Okay.
Stephanie, we got that one. This is more of a comment. Ginny, I have such a hard time with this conviction because I can't grasp how a mother could do it. But more importantly, they just didn't bother to give it a proper investigation. That's a nutshell.
Yep. Yeah.
That is the nutshell of this case right there. Thank you for the comment, Jenny. So Bob, I don't think at this point I would trust any law enforcement just telling me how that they got it right. I would want them to show me and prove to me why they think it's that person. I mean, and that's the entire purpose of a trial, right? Murr? And that's why it's so critical that that trial for that defendant be fair and impartial. And because otherwise you can't know, you can't trust a conviction when it's a railroad job. You can't do it.
And
It
you want to see the defense challenge everything that the prosecution brings. And you want to see the defense fight for the same access to testing. You know, that they're again, we don't like to throw anybody under the bus on this, but I will say that there are many things I would have done differently were I tasked with Beverly's defense. Again, we said I I would have played it out. I would have spelled it out to the jury. I would have fed it to them with a spoon in terms of the likelihood of all of that stuff fitting into a garbage bag that size, fitting into a garbage can that size. But I also would have insisted on the evidence being fully tested. Why wouldn't you test Beverly's nail scrapings if you thought she did it? Slam dunk. Why
It's
wouldn't you?
Are you
Why
jumping to
wouldn't
questions that I have starred that I haven't gotten to
No,
yet?
go ahead, go ahead.
Lauren,
I'm sorry.
Lauren.
I don't know which ones you've starred.
All right,
I
I've
can't
got them all starred. I do the
Okay.
work while you're talking so that we've got like I think and I'll get everything. I see them all. So delightfully, absolutely. I mean, what are you going to let your kid sit in a poopy diaper for 2 hours? Like, I mean, you change the kid's diaper and like I'm telling you, Allison, and she is nimble and small. So she would crawl from the front seat, get into the back seat, keep the baby in the car seat, and then she's a master at mothering. So she just pull the legs up, get the wiping done, bundle the thing up and done. And then you
Yeah.
have it. So that
Leave
happens.
the harness on the top intact while you undo the bottom and yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I changed plenty of diapers, usually when we were parked, but in the car, because I was like, I'm typically the
Yeah, you know
driver.
what? I'm gonna follow up with Allison to see if that's actually
That is
true.
absolutely true. I am
Maybe
a
she'll join
very,
us next week and we can
yeah,
revisit that
yeah, I could
as to
probably
your
I could make that work.
diaper changing prowess.
Dude, that is no lie.
Oh, 3 times I did it. It was
I did
amazing.
it
It was
hundreds of
impeccable.
times, hundreds of diaper changes. I'm a hands-on daddy. That is gospel. That is gospel. This is a comment again, Jenny. It feels good to be in a relatively small chat with a good discussion, y'all. Yes, it does. We love that. We love that. We love that. We love that. That being said, spread the word. Spread the word. Tell people about the pod. You guys are our little army to get out there. And I know you do. Like whenever I post about it or Lauren posts about it, you guys are great about retweeting. That helps get the word out. That helps us get the word out because like we say all the time, pressure makes diamonds.
There will be a chance, and we will talk about it next week for people we can reach out to in terms of letters and advocacy. Um, whether or not you believe she's innocent or if you believe that she didn't receive a fair trial. But either which way, there go we. Really. I have spoken to as you have, a large number of people who were wrongfully convicted, or did not receive a fair trial, and or both. And you do not think it can happen to you. You
No,
really don't.
no.
And we are trained to believe that you talk to the police if you have nothing to fear. They tell you that. And Miranda rights, they mean it. Anything you say can or will be held against you. And that's why I have tried to really ingrain in my children that you do not speak to the police without representation. You
Yeah,
don't.
it's
You can be very polite about it.
it's STUF. That's our rule. Allison and I's rule. It's simple. Never forget that rule. That's the golden rule of criminal defense attorneys to everyone, all citizens. STUF. When they're trying to talk to you, it's simple. If you guys do a Netflix movie on this, please call it Tunnel Vision and Lies. Meg, that the Garcia season is called Tunnel Vision. Did you know that? That's what that particular season is called. Let's see, Dr. Vonda K. For Bob, was there a hearing requested by the defense to not admit the landfill evidence? I mean, there was some minor resistance in terms of getting that. It would have been a motion in limine to keep that out. The judge let it in under.
This was his first and to date last murder trial.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of mistakes that he made, Dr. K.
Mistakes were made. Yeah. So back to the unknown male DNA found under Jade's nails and what happened to that and why
We talk about that in episode 11.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So next week we'll talk about it because everybody might not have had an
I
opportunity.
love being the no spoiler police.
I know you're really good at it too. Have you
it's
thought about having Vinny cover this case as well? I'll bring it up to him. I'd love to get Vinny onto it. The problem a lot of times with kind of news agencies is they tend not to cover wrongful conviction stuff because they're so immersed in what's going on currently that it's tough for them to kind of have it in their mainstream of information. It's like you'll get certain like Oxygen and Discovery ID that will take a look at cases, but in terms of but I'll definitely bring it up to Vinny. I mean, like
And the other thing that's unfortunate is that, you know, you and I are very, very lucky that we have the luxury of putting the amount of time in that was needed to tell this story properly and the way in which was meant to be told. That doesn't really exist for a lot of other people who have to create content quickly. This was I we talked about this at one point. I went back and realized, good Lord, Whitney Nicole reached out to me over 2 years ago at this
yeah,
point.
yeah,
So while we did not hit the ground boots running, we were gradually putting pieces together before we fully dove into it, but this was well over a year and a half in the making,
yep.
and that's a
So
lot of time.
it was. It was. Flew by though. Oh, all right, good. All right. So let's see, we've got unlearning our conditioning of police and prosecutors are the good guys. That's true. And that's not to say that there
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 yeah,
are
there
wonderful
are
cops, there are wonderful prosecutors. It's a absolutely mandatory role that we need in this society. The the flip side of it is that both of those agencies, both law enforcement as well as prosecutors offices, have so much power, and with great power comes great responsibility.
responsibility.
And
Spider-Man.
yep, and when that is taken advantage of, that power in this context, in the criminal justice system, the results are absolutely devastating all around. And that's why it's so important that you have advocates on this side that are looking at it, that are holding the government responsible, that are demanding transparency in these cases, that are relooking at cases wherein law enforcement just didn't do the job properly, or they may have cheated a little bit in order to get that conviction, whatever the case may be. You need those out there like Lauren and I that are willing to do the work, that are willing to dig, that are willing to take the heat, to get out there and do the digging that's necessary, because if not for us, who? And so to your point, yeah, there are absolutely heroic cops and prosecutors out there. But just like any profession, there's always bad.
But you also address, and I won't, spoiler alert, I will not share your quote, but you have such, I'm going to give you a compliment here, such
Aw,
a brilliant perspective and framing of the issue with the way in which prosecutors are elected to position that comes up in episode 11. When I was writing the episode, I highlight the whole thing and put as a note, this is Bob Mata at his brilliant best. It really sums it up beautifully. You and Jason both have your moments of doing that in this, and I very much look forward to discussing that.
well, thank you,
I
Lauren.
will I will cut and paste it and add it to the group discussion
Thank you,
next
thank
week.
you.
It's that good.
I
It's that
appreciate
good.
that. Yeah, yes. So Marissa says, yes, agreed. I don't like how the outsider gets assumed to be the one.
It's the easiest, it's the path of least resistance, right? If you already have something that you can cast doubt, somebody who you can cast doubt and suspicion on, it just becomes the oil to the runaway railroad. It really does. It makes the railroading that much easier.
Does, really
2
does.
other incidents, um, delightfully chaotic, that would be episode 11. So, spoiler alert,
Delightfully
alert.
chaotic is
Spoiler alert, alert.
she's the queen of spoiling.
Yeah. She
All
knows
right,
she knows a lot.
remember, we're always a week behind because we want to give you guys the opportunity when the thing drops on Thursday to have the weekend to listen at your leisure. And then typically we come back Tuesday and talk about last week's episode. So this week we had to push it back. So now we have the unusual circumstance where we're actually doing a live, which I can see it could be confusing. We're doing on a live the day that the episode dropped, but it's next week's episode of Q&A that will be
in my defense, I did push for yesterday, but I was the one who ruined Tuesday. So
she did. I could not make it work as much as I tried. All right. So, Ginny, Lauren, thanks so much for your reply on Instagram. I can vouch for Lauren. She responds. True story.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Meg P, it's so hard for me to even think past a defendant sitting in court. In my opinion, a lot of jurors think the defendant must have done something, and law enforcement and prosecution always tell the truth. That is the challenge for defense attorneys, because what you are saying is gospel. That is absolutely true. It is the first things that we address on voir dire. Always. We always ask those questions. If just by way of this person being arrested, do you think that they must have done something wrong? And do you have a tendency to believe a cop who's on the stand more than the average person? And all we ever want are honest answers to those things. There's no shame in feeling that way. We are trained, especially our generation, Lauren. I mean, we were raised to think that the officers are the guys you can trust. They're Mr. Friendly. And
I grew up watching Chips. I thought California Highway Patrol was filled with great looking guys in tight pants.
Nice package.
Ponch and John, right?
Yeah. Erica Estrada, the great Erica Estrada. So Meg, Bob, and Lauren, you've made it to Reddit. Wow.
Oh, good God. Oh
God. Should we be afraid to go in there?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it's people who are like, oh, this is the woman who fell in love with Christopher Vaughn, who was going to leave her husband for, oh, good Lord.
And here's
Reddit.
Bob, the child murder apologist guy.
Yeah, I've been dog dragged on Reddit before, so I'm afraid to even go look. But thank you, Meg.
Oh, good. So so you wanted to point out it should be Mare. Not Mer. I thought it could be short for mermaid.
I love the name Miriam.
Miriam's a beautiful name.
It is a beautiful name. I had wanted to make a point, and now let's see if it'll come back to me. We'll go on to the next question, and it'll come back.
Yep.
Oh, that's the point I wanted to make. Sorry, it just came back. What else is really interesting in this case, and I haven't seen this before, is that Therese Thien is an excellent attorney, according to many people that I've spoken to, but she was paired against the special prosecutor, and Jennifer Mudge was very clever in playing to the jury. It was us against them. And in this case, the them was the defense. And so she had a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm done lawyering. Oh my gosh, I didn't understand, like that DNA expert was a character, to discredit what he said, to discredit what Reich was saying about what we will get to next week with the DNA found underneath Jade's nails. But she was really smart of just being like, oh, when any facts that could possibly go in Bevely's favor. She had the jury eating out of the palm of her hand because she spoke to them as one of them. And Thien was much more cerebral. We said that she would often walk them to the point of making her point, but not drive it over the line. In other words, she missed a lot of opportunities.
Yes, she did. That's being very generous.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see. We got some other comments here. So Lauren, so they're talking, Shiraz is talking about Hank Brennan, who is the special prosecutor, and Karen Reed. When Brennan says the Commonwealth deserves a fair trial, it makes me want to set my own house on fire. As well it should. I have a very similar reaction to that, Shiraz, because the Sixth Amendment applies to defendants only, not the government. That's the simplest way to put that.
Yeah, because the machine is weighted in their favor.
Indeed.
I mean, to put it mildly.
Well, and look, I mean, the Constitution, everybody that listens to our channel, you guys hear me preaching about this constantly. Look, the Constitution was written for us, the citizens, and it's telling the government what they cannot do to infringe upon our rights. It's a guidebook for them. Like, hey, we've got this First Amendment right to speech, and you know what? You can't make any law that infringes upon that right. We've got this first or Second Amendment right to have weapons, which has sadly been completely bastardized in terms of why that
existed
particular amended. It's like,
and how it reads and what it actually means.
Remember, we had to boot the English out of our country by force. So, it was a very different time in terms of why that particular amendment came to be. But but all of the amendments, and when you get into the 4th, 5th, and 6th, which is where I live, those all relate to the defendant. Okay. And the defendant is a citizen. The defendant is presumed innocent in this country. So you start from presumption of innocence. And then these are the rules that the government cannot violate in terms of that particular citizen who is, again, presumed innocent. It's a very simple concept that a lot of people just don't understand. I think that people oftentimes have the misconception that the Constitution applies to them. No, it's there to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works. That's the way it operates. So Stephanie says, I hope for jury duty summons every day when I get my mail.
I got mine last week.
Oh.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I don't think I'll get
on.
chosen. Yeah.
I want you to get on. No, Lauren, it's a very important civic duty.
I know. I want to.
Oh, yeah.
They're not going to choose me.
They might.
We'll see.
You never know.
We'll see.
Make them use if they're gonna boot you, don't say, oh yeah, just be completely kind of neutral. And then when they say what you do for a living, make the state use a challenge to get rid of you. Don't allow them to get away with a freebie and get you off for cause. All right. Make them use a challenge up on you. That's what I'm requesting of you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have you walk me through it before.
I shall. The sober hipster. Now you've done, you've given Bob a huge compliment. True. It warmed the cockles of my heart. Let's see what else we got. Miss Wildside, I was supposed to have jury duty the last 2 weeks, but the post office lost your mail. I called and rescheduled me for September or October. Stay tuned for the phobia. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's an amazing experience. It really is. And you know what? It's one of those things that you'll remember always because it's such an unusual thing. It's something that you just don't do often. And, some people never do it. Like, I'll never be able to serve on a jury ever. Not only am I a creator, that lives in the, pro-defendant world, but I'm a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I'm screwed. And I would love Starsky and Hutch, another classic cop show.
Starsky and Hutch.
Talk about some packages there. Those guys.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Do you feel the reasons that the cops and prosecution don't want to reinvestigate is because of civil lawsuits? Absolutely. That plays a massive part. Keeping the wrongfully accused in jail is cheaper than paying out a civil lawsuit.
100%. Unless you live in Wisconsin,
right,
where wrongfully convicted people are entitled to $4,000 a year. Yeah. You can be wrongfully convicted in Wisconsin for a decade, and the state has to pay you $40,000.
Here you go. Here's 40 grand. Pat you on the head.
Yeah, that'll make up for it. Yeah, it's crazy. And, I saw in Oregon, they fought tooth and nail to not have to pay Frank Gable, who was wrongfully convicted for 3 decades. They pinned the assassination of Michael Franke on him. That's a little plug for Murder in Oregon, which
in Oregon,
which until Murder on Songbird Road was one of my favorite stories to have tackled.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I just walk around the house with my headphones on, yelling at no one.
I love that vision in my mind. All right, let's see what else we got. I'm getting towards the bottom of the chat, which is perfect because we've done about an hour. I love jury duty. You've been on 3 cases and 4-person. I'm trying to get everybody to start using the term 4-person as opposed to foreman on a grand jury for a month. Awesome. I'm proud of you for doing your civic duty. And it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
It really is. It's a fascinating endeavor. And it's the people that don't want to do it are typically the ones that we want doing it.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
You don't want those that are trying to get on a case.
No, and you know what? Early in my career, I was working at news radio, and I remember actively trying to get out of jury duty because I thought that it would get me into trouble at work, and that was a mentality as well. You're not playing hooky. You're doing your civic duty.
Yeah, 100%. CW, Lord, I'm late. Been neck deep in the Delphi droppings. Haven't even listened to the latest podcast. CW,
Next week, don't worry about it.
No, I'm putting her in the corner. No, yeah, next week, get caught up. It'll be our big finale until we have more to talk about. And then what I'm thinking that after we do next week, maybe we have like a wrap up show. I was thinking about maybe doing something for members only with you for the channel. So I'll figure that out.
Can Allie join?
Yes, I will get Allie to join.
Excellent.
I will definitely get Allie to join.
I'm a fan of Mrs. Mata.
She's pretty awesome.
She'll text me afterwards, after she listens. And so she texted me after she listened to 11.
And Piccolo says, Lauren, I know and remember the Michael Frankie case in real time. Lifelong Oregonian, loved your podcast.
Thank you. And that one still haunts me. And I have to say that I am in constant contact with Kevin and Pat Frankie, as well as Phil Stanford.
Yes. Kabloom, all I'm going to tell you is yes. I mean,
yeah, we'll talk about it more next week.
Yeah,
well.
That's not really a spoiler. You gotta file it within 30 days. So yeah, it is under.
You'll hear from a member of the legal team next week.
So Vanessa asked, question, will there be any place or release of any of the video documents, pictures, etc., of the production of this podcast and or case info?
Absolutely. And we've said this before, and we're not being coy. We are not, kicking it down the road. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that everything that we have uncovered is going right into the hands of the legal team that is going to deal with this. And we want to make sure that we are not in any way, shape, or form doing anything that will compromise their efforts. And so, while we have uncovered it, it does not belong to us, because we want, first and foremost, for it to be utilized in the proper defense of Julia Bevely. And if we were to put everything out, it could be detrimental going forward because it dilutes its impact.
100%. Delightfully chaotic. You guys are amazing for all you do, though, and it's not being overlooked, and it's very appreciated. We appreciate comments like that really emboldens us. It heartens us. It makes us feel like we're making an impact. It's like to be able to hear from you guys is everything to us.
Yeah,
otherwise, we're just two old people talking about a lot of old cases. That's my tagline. That's my tagline, Laura. I'm not calling you old.
I have another bone to pick with you before we go.
Oh no, I'm in trouble.
It made it. You know what? I'm gonna read this comment quickly. I'm gonna read it so everybody can. One of your little jokey teasing things made it into. Oh gosh, there are a whole bunch of really nice. Oh, look, it looks like it deleted. But anyway, somebody had said how. Oh, here it is. Okay. We said we were going to read mean comments.
Yeah.
1 star. Good story, but she's biased. I think that means me. I can't listen anymore. Listening to the two of them speculate is mind numbing. She is so full of herself and uppity. Uppity. Not balanced, not clever. I never thought I was clever, so there is.
I
And
think you're clever.
And FYI, for our information, Bob, paganism is of the occult and opens up doorways hard to close. Go back to the coast.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
listeners with good memories will remember that Bob told me that I the East Coast look about me, and I was like, I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know what that means. But this person took that ball and ran with it. Go back to the
Ran with
coast.
it.
Yeah.
So that was our fan mail for the day. All right. So Bob and Lauren, should there be a new statute, law or statute that could help in situations like this, wrongful convictions, terrify and sadden me? I mean, Meg, there is the Post-Conviction Relief Act, and that is out there, and it's been out there forever. It is flawed, and the way that the law operates is that when statutes come out, they get litigated, and they get litigated through the appellate courts, and ultimately, if you've got a real beef with the law, you hope you can get it up in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, because they really do make the law of the land. Because remember, you have legislators that are writing these laws who may or may not be lawyers, that may or may not have lobbyists that are in their ears, or PACs, or whatever the case may be. So laws get written and then they get put into practice, right? And so when they're getting put into practice, that's when you have lawyers doing what they do, which is interpreting the same words in very different ways. That starts the battles. So those battles end up, if you in the case of a criminal case, you'll get a conviction. You need a conviction in order to challenge the law. If you're challenging the constitutionality of the law, you do that through the appeals. If you're challenging it that it shouldn't apply the way that it applied in a certain situation, you're doing that through the appeals process. So you have to kind of work your way up. It takes forever, and it's really hard to get them. Like when the Supreme Court doesn't reaffirm something that they've said in a prior case, in earlier precedent, that's when they're overturning law. I mean, many times you'll get them affirming or reaffirming law. In the case of Glossop, you saw them reaffirming NAPU, and that was important. And we went through that, Lauren, yesterday on a live. Allie gave a little Glossop lesson in terms of, and that law that was created by the Supreme Court in that case stands for the proposition that if a prosecutor knowingly puts on false testimony and does nothing to correct it, and allows that to go to the jury and allows them to go to deliberate with that falsehood being in their minds, where the prosecutor knew or should have known that it was false, is grounds for a retrial. It gets kicked back. So and it's an important law. So yeah, there is statutes out there. It's still a very, very, very difficult uphill battle. Yes.
So I would also say that a wonderful thing everybody could do is reach out to their state's attorney general's office and see if they have in place a wrongful conviction integrity unit. That's what it's called, a conviction integrity unit. And if they don't, start a petition, figure out a way, because a lot of these cases, again, there are far too many of them. And unfortunately, you and I can't tackle them all. And
I mean, we're going to try.
We will. And I have one I'm going to send you. It's in Texas.
I'm not looking at jack shit until
I look, but it's in Illinois. If I ever step foot in Illinois again, there's going to be
Lauren, you are going to be drawn. Like, I'm telling you, like, it's unbelievable. It's like I'm going to the appellate. It's up for an appeal the same day Jamie Snow is next week. I'm driving to Bloomington. I promised Bart's brother, Chris, that I'm going to come attend the appeal. I'm telling you, this case you're going to want to cover it.
I have a great idea, Bob.
Yes.
And I'm going to leave this with the community. What if you and I were to pick 3 or 4 cases?
Yeah.
And we were to each argue our reason for tackling it next.
Okay.
and let the community decide.
I'm here for it. I
I'm
know
here
the
for
first
it. I think
two.
that would be great.
I got the first two. I want my first two. I'm going to give you pointers so you don't pick the two that I'm picking. So my first two out of the four, let's do four: Barton McNeil and Zachariah Anderson. Those are the two that I want to. Zachariah's up in Wisconsin, so.
And I could see my son, who's at
We
University
could
of
hang out. We
Wisconsin-Madison.
can swing by Madison. So those are my first two. Start doing your homework.
Okay, I have one in New Jersey and one in Texas. We'll see.
All right.
But if the community's into that idea, I think that would be really great.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great idea. And we'll have a whole live about it. We'll have a whole live. We'll talk about it. We'll come on. We'll pitch our cases.
We'll make our case for the cases that need to
That's
be
right.
revisited.
All right, y'all. We're gonna wrap. Again today, 5:00. We've got Josh Schiffer and Rich Schoenstein, two wonderful attorneys. They're gonna come on. We're going to talk about Reed. I'm sure we're going to talk about Richard Allen, and it'll be a great live. They're really bright guys. They're really fun guys. They're really funny guys. And Rich, he minces no words. He doesn't pander to anybody. So I expect him to get some shit in the chat. But as long as you remain, civil, no name calling, we're allowed to disagree here. We are not an echo chamber. We are an open forum for spirited debate. That is what we are all about here. And when I say it, I mean it. Lauren, you are fabulous. You are wondrul.
Right back at you. And I'm melting now because we don't usually do it in this time of day. And I'm like melting. I'm melting. But then again,
wonderful job on the podcast. Wonderful job writing it up. Wonderful job getting it done timely. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I hope that we do it many, many more times in the future.
I do as well.
And you guys, we love you. We adore you. Thank you for hanging with us. We will see you last week for our finale. We're gonna do it on time next week, so it'll be 2. I might push it up to 4, just because I think it makes Lauren's life a little easier.
Again, I am so flexible. He keeps saying
I know,
this. I'm so flexible.
I'm trying to be considerate of your time, and you've got people that you feed and you do things. So I think 4:00 Central is a very nice time. And but I'll cement that in stone. I'll get it up there. But we love you guys. Thank you so much for hanging with us, Lauren. Ciao.
Mwah. All right.
Community, we love you.
Say hi to Allie and the kids.
You, DeMilo, and the kids as well. All right, guys.
All right. Bye.
Ciao.